as you can see, I got nothing on the server yet. I don't have the form template build, so this is going to be pretty much starting from scratch. So I'll take you through the data that I've received. I have really only just looked at it for a second, so this is like a true blue setup here. So here's the data that I was given from Urban Control. So 9 times out of 10, it's not going to come this pretty. The way that VTech sets it up is this is the field that he wants to see, kind of, um, or the field from the asset management system, as well as the field that it maps to inside of SLV. So this is pretty important because eventually all this stuff's got to make it to SLV. So we got to know what field they want it to target. Um, but outside of the obvious stuff, usually, hold on. Sorry, done dying now in the microphone. But usually you just name it based on something that kind of makes sense. You don't have to follow the naming convention exact, but you know that probably. So, all right. But yeah, this is pretty well set up. Here we've got a very clear defined geozone or notebook structure. So we're going to use trial road 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we've also got the latitude, longitude. Um, you don't always get it in lat long. Sometimes it comes in a different coordinate system, and if that's the case, then we can use some GIS software to transform it into lat long. Um, Generally, the other thing you want to look for is something that is clearly going to be the unique identifier or the title or label. So again, this is really well defined here, but just something that's unique. You want it to be easily recognizable by the end user. Um, if it's a poll tag or something that they can identify with, then that's fine. So, um, so with that, let's go ahead and get going on the form. So I want to construct at least these fields here that we have in the form as imported attributes, and then we'll just kind of expand beyond that. So jump over here. Let's build out our form. Generally, when setting up the form, I make everything restricted so that requirements are met. People don't skip those. All right, and then uh, go ahead and start off with a group and a radio button to hide and show the imported attributes. So we'll call these SLV attributes. We'll make it appear conditionally based on whether or not the user sets it to hide or show. Okay. I'm kind of going fast, so if there's anything you need to look deeper into, you might want to pause it. Then for importing any sort of attribution, you always just want to bring them in as text fields. All right. That way you're not having to, well, let me back up. If the data is going to be purely read only, the user is not going to modify any of these attributes, then just bring them in as text fields. That way you don't have to worry about matching your drop down boxes. So what I mean by that is if we were going to make a drop down box for road name, for example, then inside of that drop down box in the form, it would have to have every single combination or every single possibility that's in the imported data in order for it to map correctly. So it gets to be a bit of a headache when you go about it that way. So if it's going to be read only, then just make it a text field and mark it as read only. So let me just go through and do that right now. Yes, we've got about 10 fields. Also, I tend to do this up at the top. I put the actual title. So maybe the asset ID or name, um, it doesn't matter. But basically, we're going to put the label here. And I always put that outside of the hidden attributes because generally they're going to need to see that no matter what. All right, so let's add in 9 fields here. I don't know how many. So now let's go ahead and build out our install function. So we can minimize this for now. We're not bringing in any previously installed data into this, so this makes it a lot easier. We're kind of starting completely from scratch. So, but there is that possibility that you could be bringing in data that already has been converted. So just be aware of that. Um, so for this, it's just very minimal requirements. So we're just going to put in the barcode scan. We're going to make it required. We're going to put a MAC address validation on it. As always, we're going to put an install date field here so that we can easily see that data right in the Excel file. Again, make it required. And then here you kind of can just get creative. So a lot of times I like to put in a photo. Um, and if it's going to be optional, I just make sure to note that it is optional. And then also I like to put in a text area just for comments so that they can, make a notation about something about the install. So if maybe there's vegetation that needs to be trimmed, they can document that since there's not a discrete field for that. Let's go ahead and name this. We'll call it install. And then for these guys, I'm going to go ahead and put in the remove and replace workflows. Maybe I'll call this action. Gosh, come on. Okay, and then we'll make all this conditional. Okay. Let me go ahead and throw in my other groups here for replace and remove. So with these, I just kind of try to make them as clear as possible. And then again, put in an option just for some notes. For replacements, go ahead and make this repeatable. Actually, I got to save it first before I can do that. It's call it a bug. Okay, so now it should be visible. All right, and then for remove, just kind of the same thing. Scan the QR code. Usually I'll make this not required because a lot of times, like if say a car has hit the pole and there isn't a code or a QR thing to be scanned, you don't want to kind of hose them up there. So a lot of times I'll just leave that as none required. But we'll go ahead and make it do the validation on it. And then we'll call this removal date. And here we also add in a drop-down box for reason. And the reason for this is you can perform different actions here. So installed on wrong lantern, pole knockdown, pole removed. Those are generally the ones you focus on. And I'll throw in an other there just for kicks and giggles, and then put in a text field here for the other. But what we'll do on the back end is we'll set up that. Well, hold on, let me save this and then I'll come back. So for the one installed on wrong lantern, what we'll do is actually clear out the MAC address from the installation so that the user can go back in and install it properly. So I'm going to go ahead and add in a text header here as well so that when that option is selected, they get a little notification. Okay. Make sure that's, yeah, I didn't think that saved. Okay. And then finally at the bottom, go ahead and put in radio button to indicate the installation status. And we just throw in the usual suspects. Not yet complete. Could not complete. Complete. Let's add in a removed as well. Now, depending on the app that you're using, we set up triggers to show device control. So in the case of Urban Control, their app is set so that when the status is completed, then the device control button appears on the card. However, if you delete that D and just make it complete, then the device control button does not appear. And so what this does is it gives you the option of, controlling who has access to that feature. So if it's just an install only purchase, then you can control whether or not they see that feature. So for these guys, since it's a pilot, I'm going to go ahead and add it in there so that they know they at least have the option. All right, and then what I'll also do is add in a text area so that if, could not complete, add in a reasoning box here and just add some, logic to it. I'll make it required as well. And then maybe a photo. Okay. But generally, though, that's about all you need to do for most of these. For as far as a form goes, you can almost copy this exact pattern or template, over and over again, minus the attributes up top. Um, so yeah, I think that's probably sufficient. So let's go ahead and save it. All right, so now we need to get we need to go ahead and start prepping our CSV for the import. And actually, before I do that, now is always a good time to just sort of test out the workflow. So just stick it, well, let's create a project first, I guess. And just make sure that the logic kind of performs as you would expect it to. Okay, so that shows we got the install, we got the replace, the remove. Um, Yeah, so installed on wrong lantern, so we got that working the right way. The other field works the right way. Don't think there's any logic here. Same here. So yeah, that all looks good to me. Could not complete if you mark it that way. Actually, you know what? There's another one. There's something I forgot. So let's go back into the form. And if you while you're doing your testing, try not to save any data to that form. Otherwise, you'll have to make a revision of the form. So I'll always just kind of go through it and monkey around with it without any data being saved, so that I can easily go back in and just change things up. But what I generally do too is if an installation could not be completed, then I'll hide the install group so that um, the required QR codes don't show up, right? Because if they are unable to install and they're unable to scan a QR code for whatever reason, um, then we want to make sure that they're able to save that. And with this set as a required, restriction, then if they leave that field blank, then it wouldn't allow them to save. And oftentimes what happens is they just put in bad data instead, and we don't want that to happen either. So let's just make sure that logic works as we expect it to. Okay, so install Lantern. Now let's go down here and say we could not complete it. So let's mark it could not complete, and notice that the whole install group disappears. So now we'd be able to save this without having scanned a QR code or install data or anything like that. So that's that looks good. All right. Now the next thing we need to do with these form templates, before I start working on the CSV, uh, we need to make a modification to this JSON basically. So I'm going to call this V1 for right now. Okay. Ah, dang it. All right, all right. So at the very end of this thing, you want the form that's attached to the actual data to be called, streetlight operations. I don't want any of the version stuff on it. So I know this is the one that's got all my good stuff in it, right? Because we just basically did a save as. Um, so I'm actually just going to delete this one so that I can, when I get done making all my edits, I can rename it as streetlight operations, and that'll be the final form that I attach to all the data. So I'm going to go in here and do an export of this. And then I'm going to open this guy up inside of Notepad. All right, and what we're going to do is we have to tell the software that we want that install status, the not yet complete, complete, could not complete. We want that to trigger the pin colors. Okay, and the way you do that is by setting an attribute here in the JSON of the form. And unfortunately, this isn't something you can do through the UI. It has to be done here. All right, so basically go through and you can use like, Control F to find install status. All right, so it brings you down there to the installation status section. And what we need to do is tell the software that this is the field we want to be looking at to set our pin colors. All right, now the thing that you're going to add into it is, and I'm just going to come over here. I've got it on an older workflow. I'm just going to steal it. I can't even remember off the top of my head, so yeah, there it is. Okay, so set note layer equal to true. That's the attribute we have to put in here. So, and it can pretty much go anywhere, but generally what I do is put it between the placeholder and the options. So just paste that in there, set note layer equals true, and that will ensure that that particular field within the form controls the pins and the note layers. All right. Some other things that you can do to the form if you want to, set it up this way. If you don't want your install, or I'm sorry, your QR codes to be edited after they've been saved. So basically, after somebody scans a QR code, we can make that QR code read only, which would then force them to use, say, a replacement workflow or removal workflow, which is really what you want them doing anyways. You don't want them deleting previous install data. You want to force them down this path. And so the way that you do that is by embedding an attribute called, oops, update allowed. All right, so I'm just going to grab this and we go up here to where we do the scan. Lantern. See, I'll find it here in a second. Install. All right, I think we're right up here. QR code scan. Okay, so here's our QR code scan. Show label true, required true, component barcode. Just throw it somewhere in here. Really, it doesn't really matter. So we're going to put it after required true, and then we're going to set it. Just copy that tag in that I had stolen from my other one. And if you look at it, it's just update not allowed true. So they won't be able to update it after they save it. And then you can also have an embedded message in there. So the update alert, for example, we'll grab that and I'll just copy it out of another form. And then we'll go back over here and paste that in. So, all right, so QR scan, show label true, required true, update not allowed true, update alert, and this is just going to be the message that appears when they try to do that. So this fixture has already been installed. To change the MAC, change the MAC address. Please perform the replacement or removal workflow. Yep. All right. Get that up here. There we go. Okay. All right. So that's that. And those are really all of the changes that I make here. So just kind of review. So we do the, set note layer equals true, wherever that is here. I've lost it already. Yeah, right here, set note layer true. All right, update not allowed true, and then add your update alert. So those three things. And once you've done that, go ahead and save this guy, and then go back to the server, and we're going to re-import that form. Okay, so just go to the form template tab, import, and then import that form that you just modified. Okay, it shouldn't look any different, so you shouldn't have to check on anything. So just rename it. And this time I'm going to call it Streetlight Operations. And I'm not going to give it a version number because we want this to be our final version. And we'll call this we'll put it in the Norfolk trial again. Make it a restriction and save. All right. So now we're ready to start building out our CSV. Okay, so over to the CSV. Here's the data that was passed over to me. So I'll go ahead and just create a new sheet and we'll call this our upload template. And we'll just basically copy all this. So we always have a original source of the data. Okay. And then what I normally do here is insert a field at the top or a column, a row at the top, so we can put in our form IDs basically. All right. So let's see. We don't, for all these things, we're not going to have latitude, longitude in the form. We are going to have calendar. Let me create another field or row here. And I'm just going to call this, I don't know, label. So I think I called this asset ID, ID on controller, geozone, calendar, lat, long. Um, Follow this very specific format, LAT, LNG, lowercase, because we're going to actually move this and utilize it somewhere else. We'll go ahead and call it unique ID, unit number, road name, asset owner, road USRN, and then wattage. Um, so we're good there. So once I've got that, I can go ahead and delete these two rows because we've got everything kind of combined up in this top row now. All right, now we need to add in a couple things for the form to work properly. So our hide show. So by default, we want everything to be hidden. All right, and then so forget. Then we have to add in a couple of fields here at the end. So like the installation status, we want to go ahead and um, be explicit about what the current status is. So we're going to say not yet complete. All right, we also want to be explicit about what action we want to perform. So what what is it called? Install node, I think, or install lantern. Install lantern. Okay. And of course, these have to match exactly to what's in the actual radio button. So if as an example, if you were to try to import this, it wouldn't know what to do with it, and it would just leave it blank. It would basically skip over it. Okay. And any other values you want to set, now's the time to do it. For fields that are going to be blank, like QR scan, install date, all this, you don't have to have a column for it. Just leave them blank. Don't even include them in the CSV to import, or else it could actually cause issues. So just for the things that you need, so like installation status, you want to set, um, you know, install lantern for the action, you want to go ahead and set all of your attributes you want to set, so things like that. And then there's a set of fields of fields that you always have to have for every import. Okay, so these right here, um, you've got to have inside of every single import you do. You could do a location um, field as well. Some people use it, some people don't. Um, in this case, we're not going to use it, but outside of that, these 7 fields have always got to be included. All right, so lat long, we know what that is, right? Because that's just, we've already got that included. So I'm just going to do an equals and then come over here and pull it from here. Or you can, of course, just copy those whole fields over it. Either way, doesn't matter. But just make sure you got the latitude and longitude in the right locations. Otherwise, it gets a little screwy. Um, Title. So this is going to be the label. So again, we usually just kind of correlate this to the name or the asset ID. Now for description, this one's going to be a little tricky for this one because we don't have anything in the data that just screams, something to put in the description field. A lot of times I'll put in, like if there's some sort of additional information to find the asset, like located on the wall or around the corner or something like that, I'll add that into the description field. But in this case, we don't really have a whole lot to go off of. So I'm actually just going to use the road name for this, and then that'll be it. So, well, actually, I'll do a concatenation. We'll do the asset owner and then put in a pipe in between. So, and then the road name, and then there we go. So that'll probably suffice. Skip these for right now. Okay, so here's the next thing we have to do is we have to build out the notebook GUIDs. And and you see me moving things around. It doesn't matter what order any of this data is in the file. They can be in any random order, so that's okay. Um, but for the notebooks, here's what I typically do. And in this case, there's not a whole lot of attributes or features being imported, so it's not that big of a deal. But generally, what I'll do if I've got more than say 100 or 200 is just build out a notebooks tab here, and then I'll do this advanced option, and I'm going to basically get all the unique IDs from right here. Okay. And then I'm going to copy that to right here. And then I want only the unique records. And what that's going to do is absolutely nothing because the very first field is a blank there. So that's all right. Let me delete this row first. Okay, let's try that again. Okay. Copy to another location. Select where you want that data to be dumped out at. Make it unique records only. And there we go. There's our 4 unique geozones. Now I'm not going to include everything in here as the notebook name. All I'm going to do is take the last little bit there. So what is that? Probably 10 or so. Close. Okay. All right. So those are the 4 notebooks I need to build. So let's head over here, build out our notebooks. And trial road 4. All right, there's our 4 notebooks. Um, Now, if you've got more than just a handful of notebooks, what I would do is go through Postman to get all of the notebook GUIDs. However, since there's so few here, what I'm going to do is just click into each notebook, and then up in the URL, you'll find the notebook GUID listed here. So just copy that and paste it into your spreadsheet. Okay, so there's all your notebook GUIDs. Now, what you can do is a VLOOKUP to pull those notebook GUIDs into your spreadsheet. Okay, so go over here, go to the notebook GUID um, cell, then do a lookup in reference, VLOOKUP, and let's base that on probably this guy right here. And from basically this array right here, it's going to be the 3rd row, and make sure it's set to false. And there's your notebook GUIDs. Okay, so that's probably the easiest way to go about that. All right, so let's skip layer GUID for now. Let's go to form template GUID. So for the form template GUID, this one's pretty easy as well. You can get this right from the server. Go to the form template, go to the one that is your final revision, your final copy, and then go ahead and just copy that that form template GUID and paste it into your spreadsheet. And then whenever you do that, just be sure that it's copying and not autofilling. That can be a source of a few headaches. All right, so the final one, layer GUID. Okay, so this one gets a little tricky. So what you need to do is set up the layers ahead of time. So just from anywhere, really, just create a light. We're not going to save it, but just act like you are. And then right here on the screen, go to the little note layer gear icon, and then just start adding in your different note layers. Okay, so not yet complete. I say note layers, but really this equates to statuses. complete, could not complete, and removed. And I think I've messed up. I think this one actually needs to be completed, right? So make sure this matches exactly what you have in your form. Otherwise, it's not going to work out. And if there's ones that, you know, don't exist and need to be deleted, you can do that. But for whatever reason, this one, it's not working. So we'll call that a bug. Completed and could not complete, not yet complete and removed. So I think those are our 4 main statuses. And again, just absolutely confirm or else things won't work properly. Okay. And again, you don't have to save that light that you created. All you need is just access to the note layer button. All right, so once we've created the note layers in the UI, what you need to do is connect to the VPN. Okay, so I'm connected to the VPN right now. Then you've got to open up, for Windows users, it's PuTTY. For Mac users, it's Terminal, I think. It's gonna, depend on what you have, I guess. But this is the way I do it. And then load in or go to the EC2 gateway, and then connect to that server. Now, if you don't know what these are, that SSH, if you go into your 1Password under the secure notes, there's a production infrastructure note here, and typically it has it in there. It doesn't look like Chip's added this one yet, but just kind of following that format, I'm guessing that's probably what the SSH is. Okay, so yep, looks good. And then do a sudo su Postgres PSQL, and then do a /c. So we're going to connect to the Terrago Edge database. Now we're connected to the Terrago Edge database, and now we need to get the note layer GUIDs from this database. So to do that, do select all from groups, and then put a semicolon at the end, and that gives you a list of all the groups with their associated group ID. All right. So by default, since in this case everything going into the system is not yet complete, then we only need to worry about this. Now, if there were some that were coming in having already been completed, then we'd need to copy that particular note GUID. But for this case, they're all not yet complete. So I'm gonna copy that, come back over here, and then just paste it in, and copy it. And again, this is that tricky thing I was talking about. So just make sure it's not auto-filling. Make sure it's copying all the way down. Okay. So that's pretty much the gist of it, as far as filling out the CSV. So now that we've got our required columns here, now we need to go through and put in the IDs. All right, so up here I'm going to go ahead and add my row back, and we'll call it IDs. And now we need to get a copy of the form template and actually go through and extract those IDs. So easiest way I've found to do this is actually to pull that form from Postman, because it makes it easier to spot the data. So I'm going to go ahead and connect to Postman. And let's go ahead and get this all cleared up here. So this will be a first connection into this environment via Postman. So first thing we need to do is get a token, an access token. All right, so to get an access token is pretty straightforward. Copy the URL, the root of the URL of the server, so norfolk.urbancontrol.terragostreetlights.com. Go over here, paste it, and then we need to add in some additional information to the end of this. So I'm going to copy this from another request, and then you can uh, you can just kind of freeze it and see the formatting of it. So all right, so the base URL, OAuth, token, question mark, and then you add in the attributes. So those attributes down here are username, password, client ID, and grant type. You can connect to it using any username, but generally we use the admin username. Uh, if that's the case, you have to put in the appropriate password for that, for the admin. So again, in 1Password, typically all that is saved. So copy the admin password, and then just make sure you've got that you know displayed properly. Okay. Client ID will always be Edge REST app, and grant type will always be password. Now to get a token, an access token, you're actually making a post. So up here, change this to a post, and then go ahead and send. Okay, so there's our access token right here. Don't worry about the refresh token. Um, for what we do, generally we just throw in the access token. Now, generally every time you go into the system, you're going to have to generate a new access token because it expires after 83,671 seconds, or roughly 24 hours. So just make sure you get a new access token every time you go into this and try to interface to the API. Otherwise, you'll get 404 authentication errors. The other thing I generally do is save these collections. So once I've got this script built out and it's working okay, I'll just come in here and do a save as, and I'll call this Norfolk token. That way I can easily get back to it without having to recreate it from scratch. And then I'm going to create a new collection called Norfolk and save it there. All right. All right, so the next thing we need to do is get the form template. Um, so again, this is a pretty simple one. So I'm going to just copy this from a previous request and then come in and change the URL. Okay, so here's how this is constructed. So it's going to be a get statement. You have the base URL /rest/form templates. This is the form template GUID of the form that you're interested in. Okay, so go back to the server and just get that form template GUID. That guy right there. And then paste that into the URL in Postman. Okay. Then you see the question mark and then followed by access token. So your access token, you want to paste your access token. You can do it right in the header here, or you can put it right here, either way. So just come over here to your other tab, grab your access token, and throw it in there. Okay, and then if you click here, you'll see that it kind of fills it out for you. So access token equals whatever you put in. All right, so when you've got that set up, go ahead and hit send, and it's going to give you back the form template. And you can see it's kind of broken out into a much easier to read structure here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and then put it into, usually I just stick it in a notepad and then pull it over to the side and then put my Excel file over on the other side. That way I can just, scroll down and scroll across and add in all my IDs. All right, so the first thing we need to do is add in our asset ID. All right, so that's our label, which is going to be here in column C. And the ID for that is 5. Okay, and then I'll just continue down this path. So the next thing I need to do is set our hide show ID, which is ID number 2, and so on and so forth. So I'll go ahead and fill this out without talking now. And then last thing I'll do is set my installation status. Okay. So there we go. We've got IDs set up for every single one except for lat long right here. We didn't include that in the form, so we won't include that. We don't need a ID for that. All right, so now this is very important before you start deleting rows and columns. Select all, copy, right click, paste values so that you don't delete anything accidentally when you mess up any of your formulas. All right, so these two columns, we don't need them right here because I've got them included right here. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete these. I don't need this column here, so I'm going to delete that. And then we also need to basically, I'm copying this up to here. All right, and so there we go. So this is basically my import template or my upload template. And I always save this in an Excel file so that if I ever have to go back and make any modifications, it's easy for me to do because I've got the actual form name right here as well as the field ID. If you're just looking at the field IDs, it can get a little tricky to figure out which attribute goes to which form field. So yeah, I always create a template with all the data in it set up this way so I can easily read it. And then when I'm ready to import that data into the application, what I do is create a new tab and I call this Norfolk Upload 1. And then I just copy everything from here into here, paste values. Okay, and then I delete the form or the field names. And so now all you have is your field IDs followed by the actual data. Okay. Now the last thing you do before you upload this data is just do a check on the data to make sure there aren't any invalid characters in it. So commas and apostrophes will cause issues with the upload. So just do a Control F and then just search for any commas. And then same thing for any apostrophes. Okay. And if you have none, then you're good to go. All right, so let's do one final save on this Excel spreadsheet. And then I'm going to go here, do a file, save as, and change the file type to CSV. Then I'm going to go ahead and name this Norfolk Upload 1 and save it. Okay, then shut it down. All right, so now that we've got our CSV ready to go, let's go back over to Postman. We're going to import that into Postman. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the base URL and just start a new tab. And then this is the command for getting data in. So base URL / import / CSV, since that's the format that we're importing. This will be a post. Down here, let's go ahead and put our access token. And then under the body, select form data. And then right here, just hover over it and you'll get this drop down box to change it from text to file. And then right here for the key, you want to type in the word file, and it has to be all lowercase file. Now click select files and go select the CSV that you've just generated. Okay. All right, now hold your breath and click send. And depending on how much data you have in there, determines kind of how long it takes. Most times you get this message that'll tell you the number that has been processed, whether it was a success or failure. So it kind of gives you an idea of what's going on. Once you've gotten this notification, You can then go ahead and check it in the server. If you get a 502 or 504 gateway error, don't attempt to re-upload. Basically, what's happened is that there's a timeout has occurred inside of Postman, and it's giving you sort of the false impression that an error has occurred. Excuse me, when in actuality, it's still processing. So if you try to upload something again, you'll actually get duplicates. So for a gateway error, leave it alone, just let it do its thing. Um, and for large data sets, it isn't uncommon for it to take hours for the data to be uploaded. So just give it some time. In the case of 100 and something, you saw it only took about 3 seconds to get that data uploaded. So just really depends. Okay, so let's go back over to the server. We'll tap the home button, and we'll take a look at the data that's in here. So right off the bat, I could tell something isn't right because all the pins are red, and typically we want our pins to be blue if they haven't yet been completed. So we'll take a look at that in a second. So let's open up one of these guys. The note layer is set properly. So most likely what's happened is that in the database we didn't set the color correctly or at all. So we'll check on that in a second. Our description looks okay here. Note layer looks okay. Project is fine. Name is okay. Location seems right. Open up the form. Show our data here. Everything seems to be in the right field. Install Lantern is selected by default, and not yet complete is selected by default. So that looks pretty good. All right. So and also you can see how it's kind of split out into different distinct projects. So we know that that went well also. All right. So let's fix the colors. So I'm going to go back into PuTTY, and under this groups that we got our unique ID from, our note layer GUID, this is where we set our colors. And you can see that's exactly what's happened here. Only the assign for work group has a color assigned to it. So the default color is going to be red if there's not a color associated to it. So I'm just going to go ahead and set that and fix that right in here. So the way you do that is just you type in update groups set color name equal to, and this needs to be in all caps. So I'm going to type blue, where group name equals not yet complete. And then just put your single quotations, and then be sure to put a semicolon at the end of the statement, and you'll be good to go. All right, so it says it's updated it. So let's just do that for each one of these statuses. So I'm going to hit the up arrow to get me back here. So I'm going to say complete, and this one, generally for our completions, we want them to be green. Oops. So that one didn't update because I didn't add the B at the end. Okay. And then for removed, we're going to make that one purple. And you can talk with the customer to see what exactly they want color-wise, but generally these are the ones I follow. For could not complete, generally we mark those as like orange or red. Okay, and then let's do a select all from groups to make sure that all the colors are set, and they are. Okay. So now if we go back to the server and just hit refresh, voila, you'll see that all the colors turn blue. So that's really it as far as setting up the pilot goes. You know, aside from a few variations, that's generally what it looks like. All right, now the last thing I do before turning it over to the customer is, of course, do a little bit of QA. So go ahead and add yourself as a user. Auto generates a password, enable mobile access, add user. All right, so a couple things. Let me back up here. So this is a pretty fresh server that's not been configured yet, as you see. So go into server and email settings. All right, that's an invalid URL. That is will not actually, if you try to type that in on your phone or whatever, it's not going to come here to the Norfolk server. So be sure to change this to the base URL. Okay. And then under email settings, we need to add in an email option. Okay. So if you go into 1Password and you go to logins, there's like 3 variations. So could be any of these, I guess. Okay. Go back in, just make sure. Because clearly if you click outside of this box, the whole box goes away without saving anything. So, yeah, so we're good. Okay. So now add the user. Oh, it says username already exists. That's fine. Just do a refresh. Okay, there's my username. All right, confirm that server URL matches. Okay, add a device and then save changes. When you're adding yourself as a user, it's also a good idea to make yourself part of the admin group so that you can use your login to do administrative type stuff. All right, so now let's connect to the server from the phone. All right, so last thing you need to do before you like sign, seal, deliver this thing is just make sure that everything works in the app. All right, so go ahead and connect to the server. All right, open the app and go ahead and download your project. So I'm just going to grab one of these guys here. Okay, and if you go to the list and then tap the little pin right there, it'll zoom you in to the right location. So just kind of make sure it looks right here. You know, things are where they are meant to be and not out in the middle of the ocean. Tap on the pin, make sure the descriptor looks okay, install status looks okay, start workflow should pop right into the form. Hit the show attributes, everything there should look fine. Install should look good. And then just go through some of your logic that you have. So on a, say a removal, make sure all your drop downs look okay. And then make sure your could not complete works okay. So it hides the install. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. So I'm not going to actually save anything because then it would mess up the app. But you know, at this point, I would feel good in saying that this is ready to go and ready to go to the customer now. So um, if you wanted to, you could always set up just a simple test folder and copy the data, copy a snippet of the data and put it in there for training and testing. But a lot of times you can tell right off the bat whether or not it's going to work or not. And in this case, it's pretty evident that this thing's going to work out just fine. So um, with that, we'll go ahead and end the video.